Welcome, everybody, back to Segal Talks here at the Martin E. Segal Theater Center, the Graduate Center, CUNY. My name is Frank Henschker, and I'm the director of the Segal Center. We are in Manhattan, in New York City, the only institution, as far as we know, in the Americas and Europe, producing every day new programs related to coronavirus theater performance. And our idea, instead of showing live work at the Segal Center for 3-4 years, we actually had the only film festival of screen work by theater artists. But we decided and thought it is important now to listen, to radically listen, to have conversations, and to not stream already recorded work. And we have done so for 13 weeks now. Still in March we began, and we have talked to now almost 100 artists and heard globally from around the world how the situation is, how the virus is affecting lives, the thinking, the working, also the future of theater and performance. We follow Brecht's idea, who said new times need new forms of theater, and we are investigating how are they looking like. Do we know that it's all raw? There are moments of experiencing so radically different for everyone, and we are stunned to hear from Indonesia or Egypt, to hear from Taiwan or Korea, to hear from Germany or Belgium, and then from the US or Brazil, devastating accounts from Chile, and so many more things. So we hear from masters of theaters, we hear from emerging artists, but they're all significant voices, and we need to hear from them. They are on the right side of history, artists. They have been on the right side on the complex struggle for freedom and for liberties. And the social progress always went hand in hand with the arts, and especially the performing arts. People do care, people think in social, political contexts, in systems, and they have been a contributor to change. We are in a complex time, a time of change. Spider Women, the Native American theater company, said we are perhaps in a new creational myth. We do not know how the outcome is. Something very dangerous is out there. Or like in the old fairy tales, we have the Mad King, there's a plague in the country, and it's up to us to mobilize, to go out on an adventure, to save, to put our lives at risk, perhaps, to believe at what we do. Tania Bruguera from Cuba said she's interested in Brecht's Galileo project because he had to make up his mind. Do I say what I believe? Do I say what I stand for, my work? Or do I don't say anything and renounce my views? So I get my dinner, my chicken. So there are big questions we have here. Before we come to our great guest, and I welcome Liwaa Yazji from Syria, who is a refugee, who is working in Berlin to continue her work in theater, poetry, and film and television. Let's go for a moment back to the US here. We had a terrible day yesterday. 40,000 new infections were reported. And as we all know, this doesn't really cover all the numbers. It's the highest day ever since we started this series, and we are very concerned. Texas closed its bars again. Unprecedented, because they, like everybody else in the countries that support our president so strongly, try to ignore it, diminish it. And Arizona and Florida are experiencing numbers unheard of. And there are 2.5 million infections in the US. The next one is Brazil with 1.2, and then 600,000 Russia. And young Americans, New York Times wrote about it today. Young Americans between 20 and 44 actually make up half of the cases. They might not be as sick as other people, older or people with preconditions, but about 50% of all the cases are young people. And yes, also some of them get the virus and actually get it back. They get over it, and it comes back in a second wave. The indication that it might even induce diabetes. This hasn't been known before, so it's quite a complex time we do live in here. And Saudi Arabia has, as we said earlier, has ended the Hajj. Basically, only 1,000 people will be allowed to come. Normally, 2.5 million travel to do the holy pilgrimage. Mosques are closed for first time in 1,000 years. And we do not know where this all is going. Britain might close all its beaches. It was opened yesterday. Millions went out, did not respect any guidelines, safety. They have such high numbers of cases, and they might close everything down. Interestingly enough, Israel and the Arab Emirates, who don't have any diplomatic ties, agreed for the first time to collaborate, to do scientific research on the virus. So there are interesting things. Liverpool won yesterday, finally, the league in England. They went out, people also to celebrate, and not really respecting the rules, not wearing masks, chanting, singing, and all that, what we really want to do. But it is most probably very foolish to do, though. It's the most dangerous time, perhaps more dangerous than in the very beginning. And we have to be truly on our lookout. And we have to stay safe. Another disturbing thing, the police in Houston, Arizona was more or less hiding another murder by the police. A 27-year-old Latino man, whose name Carlos Ingram Lopez, died in police custody on the lawn in the house of his grandmother. He did say on the video, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." He was in that chokehold and didn't survive. I think he had also mental health problems, but it was misdiagnosed, and there was no reason to kill another man. Strangely enough, the outcry is not as big as it should be, and we are again shocked by this, and the awareness that we have now hopefully will bring real change we need. Trump, as we know, doesn't wear a mask. In his big rally as Tulsa, his Secret Service, actually now dozens of them have to be in quarantine because they had got the coronavirus. So many people in the building where he called them was to come without masks got infected. It's a president full of disregard for human life. So many people were dying because of his politics. And he suggested injecting us, with disinfectant. He fled in a bunker when there was some unrest in front of the White House, and he cleared with tear gas friendly and peaceful protest to hold up a Bible in front of a church for a photo op with the military. And he's asking the military to basically shoot on their own people, on American people. He is supposed to protect us. The military is here to protect us and not to use military tactics, as the police did, flying helicopters over demonstrators. It's unacceptable. It's unimaginable. America should be an exception. It's not. We hear worldwide of the injustices, but we are watching in horror what is happening in here, and we all hope it will change. Police is refusing in many places to wear masks also, and nobody understands how this is possible. There should be a clear order. It's not. So it's a moment of disarray. There's distrust, deep distrust in government, deep distrust in workplaces. A lockdown, people can go out and temperatures are rising. So it's a perfect storm, and we hope it will not be a violent summer, the summer of 2020. Theater has been on the side of peaceful protest, of radical protest, but peaceful, to look at the world, to look at stories from each side, try to understand the complexity of what theater is about. Everybody who says it's like this and not like that, it's black or white, is lying to us. That's what Trump and others do. Theater shows how much actually is in direct opposition to each other. There are complex answers, there are contradictions, and we have to be able to live in contradictions, but find solutions, find forms that work. And theater always has been on the forefront of finding new forms, rejecting old ones, and reinvigorating society. With that's showing what is possible. So I'm very concerned today, and I apologize for going on a little bit longer, but also the fact that Americans most probably will not be allowed to fly to Europe. Europe is going to open July 1st. Americans, as it looks like, no American will be able, without a special permission, to fly and visit Europe. And so US is joining countries like Brazil or like Russia. And it's a disastrous politics of Trump that provoked that. He famously closed overnight, without consulting anyone, the EU borders for America when there were 1,000 cases in America, but there was no testing, there was no awareness at the time. So it's shocking what we go through. But life itself is so complex, so hard. And now with us, we have Liwaa. And again, I apologize for my long introduction, but She's from Syria, a country where a corona virus might look, if you're from there, like a little holiday. We had Natalia Worozbiniak from Ukraine, who said, for us, the coronavirus is like Christmas. We have, there's no war at the border with Russia, and we are at home. It's peaceful, and she's afraid of what might happen. She's very apocalyptic thinking. So Liwaa, tell us, how is it for you? You're in Berlin, and what time is it? Where are you? And what's on your mind?
It's 6 something afternoon. It's a hot Berliner day. It's really strange to have such hot days in summer, especially in summer. And yeah, I'm here since 2016. I arrived here to work on a project, and then it seemed that I, in a way, had no other option to leave, go back to the Middle East due to my the nature of my work, first of all, and then the nature of the dictatorship that rules the country. So there was, so I decided to stay here to work more on the project and on other projects. And how is the situation with Corona? It's like other countries, Germany is also rising higher in the percentage of, I mean, I don't know if I should call it second wave, but the institution here, they started calling it a second wave. So in a way, it could be a very short summer in terms of like really going out. And yeah, but to go to the next layer of your question about what is on my mind and how do I spend the time during Corona, just like so many of other maybe guests, it was a time for me to watch and observe. I wanted to be part of this kind of universal. It's not a break actually. It's like kind of I accepted. I took in the situation. I didn't want to fight against it or to immediately produce about it. It was also really impossible for me. So I took it as a time to re-inform myself and to recharge. That's on different layers, whether politically to read more about maybe historically how other plagues really, I mean, happened in history, how to look at this period as part of a historical kind of tide, and to know more about the policies that could really could have contributed to this thing that we are in, because I was surrounded by some kind of really obnoxious ideas concerning how China ate bats and all these things. So for me, it was really very superficial to really get in and accept all this feedback and to know more about the distribution of wealth in the world, and to understand more and to recharge more in that terms, not only as an artist, but as a human being, because because we're all part of this. And once again, and this is really coming from a Syrian background, once again, I'm pretty sure now there's another layer to tell us all that no one is safe alone. So this thing that we lived through in Syria, and like, there is a spot somewhere, there's always a spot somewhere in the world where a war is taking place, where like weapons are sold, where refugees come from, where disasters happen. But we are safe here, we close our doors, we're safe in, I don't know, Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Ethiopia, I don't know. But I mean, there is always that kind of distance that something is happening there and would always happen there. And as long as we're safe, as long as we're in our comfort zone, it's all right. But lately, the last maybe 10, 15 years, I would say that there's this slogan is being defied and shaken. And the more time passes, the more I guess we're sure that if there is a war somewhere in the world, if there is a crisis somewhere in the world, we are all concerned. And that's how really coronavirus really functioned in a way. So it's not there in China, it's not there in Syria, it's everywhere. And you're not immune if you are rich. And if you're not immune if you're in a first world country. though it really helps, but you're not immune. So I mean, all these ideas about to be really aware about what are the factors, how things interact, about class issues in times of crisis. I mean, there is this idea that Corona unified every person, like artists, I don't know, people wherever they are, rich and poor. Actually not. I mean, to be confined in like 2 meters apartment is not like to be confined in your palace, and like to be confined with access to healthcare is not like to be confined in a country like Syria or Sudan or Yemen at the moment. So all of these things really, in a way, shaped the time, the first time of shock about Corona. But at the same time, there is a kind of recharge and trying to understand the place where I'm standing in, what kind of content. I mean, looking about content, about ideas like Darwinism, because I was like thinking if dealing with Corona is a kind of another survival of the fittest. I mean, it's is this another layer of how certain ideas, certain concepts extinct and other one come to life again? And to deal with such a dilemma, whether on a structural level, on a personal level, is this another kind of Darwinism? And to see, because that means there is a kind of a new thing happening, something new coming out of it. So I was very curious to, maybe we're not the, I mean, I'm not the one who would be surviving. It's not about like I survived, but it's the idea of what is the shape that would come out of it as a result of the survival of the fittest in such kind of struggle. And so I was fascinated to see how each country or each community or each group, let's say, dealt with this. And there was like ideas that Malaysia is doing well, Sweden is doing well, I don't know who's doing well. Sarcastically, maybe some poor countries were better in acting or reacting to such a thing. So it was for me very interesting and very good to look at that and to understand. I mean, to communicate in a way with other people how they are dealing with it, and just to take a distance from my own struggle with like work and Syria and all of this, to have it all together in one pot with this international moment. So yeah, I mean, that was very intense for me. It was not a kind of a break in that way. That's why I told you it's not a break. Actually, it was more of an intense time. I would not say it's a forced intense time, because in a way, I could have just went working on my project. But I really took this decision to be part of it, to watch it, observe it, live it, and to have some moments when I'm thinking, worried, or just sitting there, knowing nothing what to do, and worrying about people around me. So it's really on that level. And trying to examine ideas like all these also conspiracy narratives that we were surrounded with. It was for me very, as someone who's working with narratives and stories, and it was for me very important to see how people also react in these narratives, who would say that this is a kind of manipulation, there is nothing over there, there is no virus, it's just like a flu, and they're using it to control. All these narratives were very interesting for me to see how people use different mechanisms to defend this moment, this absurd moment. So yeah, that was a full job of nothing, doing nothing, like a full job. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about you?
Well, as you know, for the series, we are trying to make sense out of by listening. Yeah. Where were you when it happened? Do you remember when it started?
Yeah, I was in Syria. I was shooting, working on my next documentary. I was shooting there. And then I started hearing the news about Corona, and then I started to think, no, maybe it's just like something like a phase, or it happened quickly and it goes. And then when it started to really materialize on the international scene, I was directed to the choice that I should go back to Berlin. Because I cannot stay for a long time in Syria because of security reasons. So I should really find a way and interrupt and stop everything and go back to Berlin. And just the way back to Berlin is really an absurd moment now when I say I have to go back to Berlin, because I'm Syrian and I should stay in Syria. That's where, I mean, the word back home means for me. So, but I mean, politically and historically at the moment, it's not home. I should really leave. So I went back to Berlin and I had to stop working on a documentary, which is dealing with the idea of homecoming. So it was also a question for me about home. It was a moment when, like, I was in a way facing again the theme that I'm really interested in working in lately, about the idea of home and identity and how they manifest and grow and develop, or like deteriorate in times of crisis. So yeah, I stopped and I went back to Berlin, and I had the time to think about all the projects, all the content that I was working on in terms of relevance, because it was a kind of a U-turn. I mean, there's a moment of interruption, and everything you're working on seemed for a moment irrelevant to the moment that you're living in. So all the narratives or the stories or the projects, let's say, yeah, you reminded me of Syria. Sometimes the electricity just went off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I had to deal with questions about content and what is relevant in this moment. I mean, is what we were, are these ideas and topics that we were talking about before relevant? And would they stay relevant? Is it a moment where it's a kind of interruption and the system will be able to recover again, or the system will change? I was a bit pessimistic because I knew that the system is stronger and it will find ways to leak again from the new demands. It will leak again to reform like a jelly thing again. But sooner or later, the deconstruction of it started to show in a way. So yeah, there are huge questions about content started to raise in front of my eyes about Syria, about war, about new forms of war and new forms of, I mean, the idea of new form actually, and like what will come out. I do believe that where we're going, we were going there anyway before Corona. But the thing that really maybe surprised us is that it is faster now. So we were in a way sensing that we're moving somewhere, but Corona came and just took the break out, and like we're going there like faster than we expected and faster than we were prepared to. So yeah, new forms would, and actually it started, yeah, in a way, even though they were like ideas and they were thinking like think tanks and an appetite for something new. And we're just now faced with the fact that we don't have so many years to think about it. It's just like there, it's over there. And the online issue is like there. It created now questions about the meaning of outside and what is safe and what is how to access art and what is the intention, I mean, about art. And I mean, these are, I mean, what is the reception theory now? And so all these things are now on the table quicker than we were thinking that they will happen. So who's your audience and who you're talking to and what is your tools? They are very, very much in big question marks. And do you really own the tools of the coming period? we might think that we do, but maybe we should like take a moment and think that we don't, or we should learn the tools of the coming period, or like to maybe not accept it, I don't know. It's, yeah. As Chekhov says, it's time for new forms as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the Segal, yeah. So I remember that monologue when I'm talking about new forms coming, and it's it was not said in the play in a peaceful way. I mean, it was kind of strong moment. I mean, so it is. Although as I told you, I feel the system is stronger, and it will try to bring everything in a way to the pace where it controls the tools again, blah blah blah. But I think there's the Pandora box, and there's something out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tell us more about going to Syria to make the film. What did you see in Syria? How are people doing? I can only imagine how it is in a civil war, and then the fear of Syria. I'm sure you're in contact with family and artists. What's going on there?
What's going on there? I mean, the surface, the regime is taking control of the thing again, but there is at the moment an avalanche, an economic avalanche. There is a very, very big economic problem. And that is the universal recipe, actually, after wars, is that there is like this economic fall down and meltdown, and like everything is the dollar. I mean, the currency compared to dollar is like falling down drastically, and people are I don't really know. I don't understand how people really survive. I mean, people started to get salaries like less than $2 of. I mean, it's really absurd what's going on there. And it is always astonishing how something really emerges and it makes things work. How people really there manage to eat, to work, to carry on in a daily life. It's really surprising because I mean the economic situation is so bad. Corona came like we say like gold on a plate for dictatorship, because then you can have a lockdown, you can start demanding things from people that in your dream you couldn't have dreamt of better conditions. I mean, you can now sue people for not having masks. You can just like lock down all the community centers, theaters, cinemas. I mean, what else such a dictatorship would like to have? I mean, to ask people to stay home starting from, I don't know what time, it's 6 now. Now they opened actually, but I mean, before it was 6 p.m. And in weekends, you're not allowed to go starting from noon time. And there's no electricity enough. There's no access to good internet. So, I mean, what else such a dictatorship would like to? I mean, but at the same time, it is important for the safety of people because there the infrastructure is destroyed during the war. So it should be in a way very tactful in relation to Corona, but still this is really very suspicious. And it is, as it said, they really benefit from making people afraid. And who knows about the numbers over there? They really, every day they give us an update of how many new cases and how many deaths and how many healed people, but it's really ridiculous because who believes those numbers? I mean, in Syria now, maybe the total number is 160 something, like the whole total number, which is could be, but still very strange, very strange.
160 is like one nursing home in New Jersey, really so it's like a big lie and not confronting realities.
It's, the same thing happened. I mean, it's ridiculous when you listen to the media. It's really funny because they say that we're doing that for the safety of the people, all these things, So it's we care about the lives of people, but we know that 500,000 people died and like 500,000 still in prisons, 500,000 disappeared. I'm talking about safety and like wearing masks and all these advertisement in the TV to ask people to wear masks. It was really ridiculous when people really lost their noses, for example. So it's and all this advertisement worldwide for like stay home. I mean, for a Syrian, it's I would have said I wish to stay home. I cannot stay home. I have to stay somewhere else. For lots of Syrians, the word home is I mean complicated, and this campaign of stay at home is just another reminder of injustice. So it's just I wish I can stay home because I cannot stay home. And yeah, so it's in terms of artistic life at the moment, it's close to nothing because of the confinement. Before, it was divided into two layers. The institutional level that has to do with relation with the regime, getting funds from the regime, working in an international theater organization or international cinema organization. This was more of a spokesmouth of the government, of different of certain narratives. And there were the independent people who were trying hardly to survive in such circumstances, in war and in scarcity of funds, and every fund you get from outside is doomed to be for a Western agenda, and you have to maybe be jailed for that. It's not easy to get money from outside with a financial economic boycott. You cannot really get money inside Syria. So the scene for the independent artists, it's very, very complicated and difficult to get money inside. They have to, in a way, smuggle money in to produce really poor theater, but still some of them try to find ways, and it's always good in war because the bribery flourish, and there's always some way that you can really get resources, but still it's really very complicated how you're gonna say a narrative that is different and not praising the regime in a way, but still do it inside Syria. And this is really heroic because then you are in the face of a big killing machine. So it is not easy, and some people are trying, whether by making like theater labs or seminars or workshops, or some productions, they are really, you can count them on your hand. How to twist some famous texts into, to say something that you want to say, but you put it on the mouth of Strindberg or whatever. So it's not easy for artists, and of course they are not protected in a way when everything stops and they really work by the day or by the project. There's no way they can get money. There's no way in the world where they can get money, and it's very hard. I mean, even taxi drivers. I'm not really saying that only artists are fighting in this battle. A lot of people who are not getting salary, which also increases in countries like Syria when the idea of institution is questionable and destroyed in a way. So yeah, and it's very hard now for artists. I know friends that they really, suffer financially. They had to go back to their families to live in big numbers in one house. The social contract in Syria is also destroyed in the war, so that is another problem. But still, there is a way of collaboration. I mean, between people, it's more of a Mediterranean attitude towards each other. So there is still concern for your neighbor if he's eating well or not, and it's just like there is still this. Maybe the word Mediterranean is too general, but that's how we use it in Arabic. But there is a way where people really help each other, but it's not enough. It's not enough at all. It's not like in Germany, because, for example, in Germany, they decided to help artists for the first, in in the first wave. I don't know what happened in the second wave. Yeah. So that's about, I mean, the situation in Syria, and it's not better in Lebanon. I mean, there was a kind of interaction between Syria and Lebanon in the artistic scene, and so it's not better at all in Lebanon at the moment. So it's, the whole thing is really melting down, and yeah. Yes. So yeah.
It's disastrous. It's disastrous here, and how disastrous must it be by a country torn by civil war, and in Syrian refugee camps where people say, yes, you say we should wash our hands, we don't have soap.
No. And you should, all these things about masks and disinfections and all these, they really look like different, I mean, just like living in Mars. I mean, it cannot be applied. I mean, no way it can be applied. And I don't know how they are surviving in terms of medical issues. I mean, I did a project about birth, about giving birth, a play about that. And I mean, there was no corona, there was nothing in that, I mean, in that scale. And the information you can get from midwives, from healthcare personnel over there is disastrous. So what about corona? It's really above imagination. I mean, with the kids, with mingling, with living, with the conditions of living, I guess corona really is very, just kind of monocular, like you see bigger. The problems that you thought they are over there. I mean, if someone got infected somewhere and he visits you, so you're infected. So it's not about like they can really get sick over there and I'm safe. Really, more and more I'm really certain about this idea, how to be involved in, like, altogether as artists in each other problems. It's not about Syrian problem, American problem. Now lots of American artists are migrating to Berlin as well. So it's, in a way, it's important to see how we all in this. It's not about only Syria.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I wonder how you as a person hold it all together. I know you're a poet. You had a reading at the Poets House in Manhattan in New York. You had your play at the Royal Court in London, the play Goat, which dealt with the idea that if your son dies fighting for the government in the war, you get a goat. What does that mean? And how implicit is everybody? I mean, we also did the reading. It's a great play. It's also done in Germany, many places. You're also a successful writer of soap operas. As far as I know, you wrote over 100 or 150 episodes. And many people said the Syrian ones were the very best to make money. And you documentary filmmaker going back to find out what home means. And then you have to go back to home, which is not your home. And your home is in complete destruction. So so Corona forced you to think about the idea of home or artistic home. What did you find? What makes sense at the moment? What thoughts do you have?
I was mostly thinking about injustice in general. And that is actually, again, this is the cycle where that's why I feel that I'm involved in arts, because that's the way, that my only way to talk about injustice and to deal with that, with questions of injustice. So home is, I mean, home / let's say the word choice. For me, I mean, with all these campaigns before about deporting people or not allowing people in, and at the same time selling weapons to that area where you don't want to get refugees from. I mean, it's really like a dump over there, like a garbage bin, like a universal garbage bin where you can throw your jihadis, you can throw your fanatic people, you can throw the weapons, the expired food, expired medicine. But I mean, now Syria is the universal thing. I mean, we know that they open borders for like fanatic people to go from France, from Germany, from UK, from Turkey, from all over, from Tunisia. But you're not allowed as a person to find refuge in these countries. So, and then when I was like thinking about this dichotomy, because then if a French person dies in in Daesh in the north of Syria and he has family, and then okay, or he doesn't die, and then deporting him back home, they don't want them. I mean, the French government is now, or like the German, the British, they are having all these discussions about, we don't want those people to come back. We want to sue them on other land there. So the idea of home for me is like really very complicated in this research, because this is what I'm trying to do in this documentary about the idea of home. Is maybe this person is from, let's say, Algerian origins, as they try to propagate that it's always with Arabic Islamic origins. So they go there to create the Islamic, I don't know what, the caliphate over there, and to create home. And then they failed. The French don't want to take them back. They don't want to take Syrians who are like sent out from that area in the north of Syria. They had to flee. So I mean, what is home? What is home? I mean, it's for Syrian, it's very complicated, because now it's full of foreign people that they are not allowed to travel, and they are also not welcomed anywhere in the universe. But still, people are selling weapons to your country, and they advocate fighting. And if you go and ask Syrians outside, I mean, after 10 years of refuge life in miserable conditions, if you ask them, do you want to go back home now? It's maybe possible. And the answers you get really strange. You know, it's you get answers of yes and no for really very strange reasons. And the painful thing for me is that when you ask people inside Syria, do you want those who travel to come back? There is a moment of silence that says no. So in a way, the nation really divided between those who are inside and those who are outside. And this is not about only Syria. I also talked to our dear friend Anja Wirt about this idea. About the idea if he was welcome to go back to Poland at a certain moment. It was really important for me to understand this mechanism when people really leave, if they are wanted back. There is the feeling that for those Syrians who are outside, there is this feeling that they are weighted, and like there is a moment when they maybe go back. But the fact is that no. People who are inside, they managed life in a way that, I mean, even resources wouldn't suffice if people come back. And the country lived from the families now live from the transfers. So it's a kind of an economic cycle now that, of course, the regime is benefiting from, but there's no end to it. So home for those people who left is no longer home. And home for those who were taken in, like ISIS or fighters or whatever, is also very problematic. And I don't know how some politicians really talk about identity and home as something very solid and Christian or Muslim or, yeah. So this idea of home that really was important for me. I heard a lot from people that after Corona, I mean, German people, or let's say international people who are living in Berlin, because that's the place I know now at the moment. I don't know other cities, but they look proudly at the way the German authorities dealt with Corona, and in a way they really felt rooted. Mm-hmm. They felt to be in the right place with all their complications and like ideas or remarks, but in a way they felt rooted, and they felt that other places failed their people. So in a way, the idea of safety now will redefine the meaning of home in a way for so many people, is to define danger and safe, and that means to define maybe the word home. For Syrian, it was a problematic issue because home meant danger. If I go home, I'm in danger, definitely. Whether physically by bombs and death, or this, I mean, with all the layers of detention, war, death. But at the same time, home should really have a different meaning for me. So it looks like living with an abusing family, living with an abusing father or mother. It's a kind of problematic relation where you always go back to question and to understand more. And so yeah, with Corona, I guess it will define the relation of people, people's relation to ideas of home. And yeah, there is something that also I wanted to tell you about is with all these ideas about refugees, and here I came here with a visa, so I'm not arriving here as a refugee. But I was so obsessed, and I mean, all my work is in a way political. I would just put it in 2 brackets because poetry is not, but I mean, theater and documentaries are political. So it was very astonishing for me that the new bearings of refuge bearings or whatever, they don't really prefer Afghan people to come to Germany at the moment. Like Syrian are okay, Afghan, they should really be deported quickly because Afghanistan is no longer on the top of the list of danger countries or like the countries at war. And at the same time, German citizens are not recommended to travel because it's not safe for them. So for me, safety and danger is like a very national. So it's a luxury. I mean, you're born with it. It's really, for me, I mean, now with this Corona thing, I guess if we don't really question again all these issues before we vote, it's really, I mean, we're going in a slide with like one-way ticket down. If we don't really understand it, that there is a relation between our actions as artists, as human beings, not just what we say, but also what we do. And I was thinking maybe the American election should be opened globally. I mean, because it affects everybody. I mean, maybe there should be an online election, like to have some votes for international people to, because it affects us. I mean, it's really, it's not such a, it's not American business. It changes a lot in everybody's life. So maybe there should be an idea that they give us, like international people, they give us some slots in the, in the elections in the company. Yeah. And I was sure that he would be elected back in 2015. I was pretty sure. I was in New York and I was attending all the rallies that he was doing, Trump. And I thought at that moment, if this person makes it for the first round, he will be the one. And I remember maybe at that time, I also communicated with you, and I, in a way, maybe, I don't know if you remember, I told you, I feel that he will be there for so many reasons, because people wanted something different from maybe the system, but at the same time, if he was able to convince 1,000 people, he would be able to convince the others, because then there is an appetite for that. And coming from an area where you smell the authoritarian, or you smell these things, you know that, I mean, you see it. I mean, it's, I was seeing it coming, and I hope this time not.
This time not. No, it's true. I think America doesn't have an experience of an authoritarian leader. That's perhaps also why the Democratic Party doesn't really know how to act and not, and everybody tries to be civil and write articles and have rational arguments, but it is not what's working. I'm so sorry, you know, I see all the complications you do experience. I even remember when you said when your father died, how complicated in your own country even it was, you know, to get a funeral done, and how can you call a place then home if it's not safe. And Germany, yes, has done extraordinary well, and also took in, I think, over 1 million refugees, or 1.5 million from Syria. America took 2,000 or 4,000 in a year. Even so,
Slovakia, they took maybe 1.
Yeah, yeah.
Something
It's,
like that.
and even so, they had a big responsibility about politics in the region and a complete
Yeah.
neglect of what a global leader should be doing. For your work as an artist, is it a confirmation about the way you worked, you thought, or do you think coming out of this, as we say, nothing lasts forever, not the good things, not the bad things. This will be over one day when they hopefully find that vaccine, and hopefully it's soon. But what will it be different? Will your work be different?
It should be. At the moment, I don't know how in a way, but it should be. I mean, it's otherwise I would be moving in a bubble. I mean, it just it should be different. I hope that it will be different for the better, of course, but it should be I will go back to war, because I'm always trying to think about the values. I mean, it's what is more shocking for me, the war or this? I mean, it's
what is more shocking? What is it? The Syrian civil war or Corona? What do you think?
The Syrian civil war, I guess. Yeah, I don't have answer. I mean,
is it close?
It is. It's more shocking. It's the Syrian civil war. Actually, I would start saying it was a revolution, and then it turned to be a war. But it's more shocking because it also in a way redefined the relation of some people that are very close to me, who were, for example, pro-regime or had such ideas. It was also shocking on the personal level, not only the horror of the war, it's also the inside horror of having somebody close who can kill, and or somebody close who don't mind that other people die, or to see the destroyed, to be surrounded by destruction, to see how you normalize with it. I'm fascinated by how we quickly normalize, how we immediately find a way to deconstruct things as if nothing is happening. And this is an area where I'm really very interested in working, and that's how that's the main thing about Goats, the play, is that how we, no matter how surreal things are, we just really rearrange things that we accepted and as if it's been there forever. And I know it's a survival mechanism, but it's still very, very interesting for me how we cope and how we accept and how we normalize. And so yeah, for me, in Syrian was the Syrian experience was more shocking, and it took me time to talk about it, to produce about it, and then I noticed what kind of effect it had on me. And I guess now with the Corona, it will also take some time for me to understand what kind of questions and layers it added to my work. I can now, from an outside point of view, look at how other plays or performances are now being conditioned and limited by the idea of social distance. And you can hear from your friends that the rehearsals were so intimate, and like they were like touching and talking and whatever, but then the performance was respecting the social distance. And like, so even in the mentality of directing, of writing, and of there is something going to be, from the form, there is already this step of thinking about intimacy in a different way. And this layer would be added. There would be people who are still afraid to shake hands, even if Corona stops. Who knows what's coming next? So there is this question that is now posed, and everyone is reacting to it and you have to respect those who are still afraid, who don't want to. You look at the Berliner ensemble, you see how they distributed the chairs. So again, theater is no longer an intimate moment. So
they have 20%. They opened again, but 20% occupancy. Like one row is empty, and then 5 seats are empty. The next person, because it's state subsidized, they can afford it, of course. But how is it going? Do people go? Have you seen a play? Did you go to see a play?
Not yet. Not yet.
Are you interested?
Of course. I mean, also then again, Frank, the question of online, everybody is thinking that we should also think of how to transmit this into as an online material. Is it fit to be an online material? So again, there is something about thinking about theater is definitely reconstructing, reshaping in a way. And as I told you at the beginning, I'm sure we were going there before the corona, but corona, it just, they took this little pebble and things are faster.
The velocity of it, in Virgilio's idea of it, is just incredible. Do you see something in Syria or Lebanon online? Things where you say, this is an interesting idea, that's a form that could work. Is there something?
I'm still thinking. I mean, working with images for like in a documentary, I'm always, my relation to online is, vivid, is not rigid, my relation to this. And there was a moment when I felt, oh my God, now the universe, now the cultural scene around me is working on my own pace. Great, nothing is happening outside. I have all the time to watch what I've missed. So that's good. Now everything is working on my slow pace. I don't have to run. Everything is slowing down. I can really enjoy like a reversal, slow motion movement. And all these ideas, which luckily I'm not having so much, like the FOMO, the fear of missing out, because this was now classified as a real phobia, like in psychiatry. Again, with the influx of things available online, and you cannot really get grasp of all of them, again recreated this need, oh, what should I? Again, you have this, that's how I say the system reshapes itself. Again, there are so many things that you'd like to see, but that you're missing out because they are there for like one day, one night, whatever. For example, Theatertreffen, the theater festival in Berlin, the important plays, they were there really for a very, very, very short time and like with limited spaces, which is, also a good idea, a good convention maybe for the theater. But again, I've heard it a lot from friends around me that they're hectic trying to catch up with this online kind of invasion. So everything at a moment, everything is there for you. I wouldn't say it's designed to be online, but now the idea of designing things to be available online is present, is very present. And from film festivals, it's very clear that I attended so many seminars where there's even like big festivals, they cannot really withdraw now this possibility from the festival. So even if physical festivals are inevitable, they will happen in a way, but still this one step forward would never go back completely back. Things will be in a way, should be in a way, will be online. People will, since they tasted the idea of it's possible, so it will not go back. And this applies, of course, to theater, and this definitely will have things to affect the way we write and the way people produce, and how theaters depend financially on tickets or on subscriptions, on such things. But yeah, it is happening. The online thing is happening, and it's enjoyable. It's of course it diminishes a lot of the meaning of the genre, of a genre like theater. It is more accessible for people in other countries who don't have the chance to see Milo Rao, let's say, but it is coming, it is there, and we have to accept it and to see what tools do we have to deal with it. Do we I mean, fighting against it is absurd, I guess.
Is there something you saw, like a production? This was great.
Yes, I saw one, but I cannot talk about it because it was a secret. It was a secret thing. Yeah.
Maybe talk in secret terms, about mysterious terms.
Yeah, yes, I saw some productions from the region, from Syria, from Lebanon, and I liked them. And I was fascinated that these things are happening with the little resources people have there, and to understand how people struggle to make sense and make meaning, and to talk about values in a demand for triviality. I mean, there is like a global and of course local intentional support for triviality and for ridiculousness, and to find someone who's trying to make a value and to question this value is very, in war destroyed places and in economic problems, it's still very touching.
So there are, I guess, underground performances, secret places. You are invited by a password shortly before, so it can't be censored. And so it's a form of an underground subversive art, as it has been, you know, for centuries in authoritarian regimes or in war times, where you put your life at risk when you utter sentences or create images that are not conform. They are labeled as degenerated, whatever. But also now you put your life at risk with COVID, you know, as an actor with your company, but also perhaps as a performer, you might come. As a spectator, you come, you put your life, you could get the virus, or as a performer, you could get it from the audience. It's an Artodian situation of a plague and signaling through flames. And as someone said, it is Artodian times, but we have to stay on the right side of madness and not follow the madness that is destructive. It's on the dark side. Theater is on the side of life. Coming closely to the end, what do you read? What inspires you? How do you keep your motor running? How do you sharpen your knives?
I watch a lot of what is available online, actually. When
Film
it's possible.
or TV or
films,
theater?
No, not TV. Films and theater. And I take time to think a lot, actually, and also imagine things without, with some like staying out in a way. It's not very recommended, but I mean, thinking of the relation of the outside, how maybe we abuse the relation in a way with things. I mean, with the materials around us, and like there is a moment to understand the value of everything, of like being out and traveling and all these things. So it's, for me, it was a very good moment to think again, and watch and read, and think about Black comedy, think about grotesque again, think about the absurd, because I guess there are a lot of elements of the absurd in this moment, of the tragic, but still also I guess maybe I was thinking, is it the right way to talk about it in I mean, is like the grotesque, you know. I was like thinking about also this crisis, this political crisis between, I mean, everyone is talking about the political crisis of the left, and there's also the political crisis of the right. And so I mean, this is really problematic, because there should be now then the North, maybe, I don't know, but there should be something new out of this. And for me, everything that is too absurd and too tragic and problematic, I try to look for what is really the absurd and what is the surreal, and then what is the maybe the black comedy about it. It's not a comedy, it's just like what is the grotesque about it, because I feel this is the way to understand it more and to face it as a human being, not only as a tragedy, but also when you see it historically, you see your place historically in this. I mean, it's very tiny and it will repeat itself. It happened before and it will happen again. And repetition is again that thing that breeds not laughter, but breeds your distance, and it breeds your interaction with it. And I was thinking where this would be in relation to Corona, or these times that we're living in. Yeah. I do have it as a question. I don't know actually the answers, but yeah. And I'm watching a lot. I'm attending the Segal talks, and yeah, no place much for TV. Although I'm working on like a mini series for the Arab world, but yeah, it's more about if you answer your own questions, I guess you manage maybe more to be more more talking to the others. So the more you talk to yourself, the more you have questions, the more you have doubts, and you doubt your own tools, you doubt about the narratives. It's a war about narratives after all. Everything, I mean, this is really now we're very well known. We're just fighting over narratives. So the more you question the narratives you are in, I mean, the more that maybe you could be useful and talking to others.
Yeah. I think you're right. We are still flying by night. We don't know where it's going. We have to talk to others, listen. I like your question. This is a big question. Is theater, will it be the kind of the theater of the real, the idea of Carol Martin's idea of the documentary way, as you do documentary, or will it be in this theater of the grotesque, the absurd? Because life is now stranger than fiction. Life doesn't make sense. It's absurd, grotesque what's happening. So pretending that anything has a logical sense on stage doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't reflect the work. And this was how it is in Eastern Europe, the comedies of Mrożek or Ionesco or so many others, because they said this is real. It's much more a reflection of reality than anything that would be quote unquote real or could be a story on a film. As maybe as a closing question, what advice do you have for young artists, also for our listeners, but like the young Liwaa, who started out in theater and writing and film, what do you say to artists, and what do you say to our listeners? How should we use this time best, and what should artists do?
Maybe they should tell me. Maybe they have better answers than the ones I have. Of course, I'm not in the position to tell anybody. This is, of course, but I just talked about myself. It's, I mean, get informed. It's not about production. It's not about how much we produce. It's about what we produce, what stays. It's not important that you produce superficial, quickly, good, film or theater that dies immediately when when the phase goes away. But it's important to think and deeper and deeper and deeper. It's art gives us the chance to create even the speech of the other, if you're a writer or whatever. So you can create the narrative of the other, and that is a moment to understand maybe and to get informed more, not to have judgments quickly, and to it's a moment to, life is so complicated to have, of course, to so the more you know about it, the more you get informed, the more you take a distance and not worry about what you're producing at the moment is very important. I would say this is maybe something that I also should advise myself, not only others, is to think in terms of community, not only in terms of like an individual. If you cannot go to theater, maybe, I mean, in your own little community, it's there is, I mean, a moment where you can think of on a smaller scale, and artists, they can now with the social media, they can have more channels to talk to each other. Maybe this would be helpful in sharing their ideas. And I'm not doing this, but I've always thought that this is a good idea. And when there's a blanket of problems covering everyone, I mean, why not to talk to each other as well? But yeah, get informed and just like to know more, and not worry about producing at this moment. I mean, they will come, and the more you take in, the better you would give later on. So yeah.
Well, that is very good advice. You know, stay informed. You know, think about community, and find a way to participate. So that is of real significance. So Liwaa, really thank you. And
thank you, Frank.
And one can only imagine, you know, what does it really mean? We hear you, you know, and then we go move on to something. Well, what does it really mean? And you're not in your country, you had to leave, trying to make it with theater and writing in another country where you have to speak other languages there. And the loss, you know, that cannot be replaced. And what's lost already is also lost. You will not, it doesn't even exist anymore when you wanted to go back. And what will the future bring? All these uncertainties, and we have to all reimagine ourselves. It's really hard work, and you've been thrown into it by life. You didn't ask for it, and you have to deal with it. But you're dealing in it with the most beautiful way, in creating art and participating in community sharing, and perhaps through your experience and work, and also create meaning for others who see what you do, and they recognize something, it resonates, and perhaps makes them feel a bit more at home for that moment, and gives an understanding, and we get more accustomed to that new world we live in. And this is also what art does, that artists anticipate a future and perhaps help us to stay in the moment, and to say it's okay, it will be different, there will be Zoom, there will be digital world, others, but there are ways to see something new.
Yeah.
But listen, thank you. I hope you will have a good dinner in Berlin. Say hi to Mohammed and your girl.
He said hi too.
Good, and really thank you for joining us. As we said, it's serious time. 2.5 million infections here in the US. Other Times articles that
really sorry.
It's 10 times higher. Most probably the number is 25 million at the moment.
Oh.
The real number, it's quite it's stunning, and as you say, grotesque, absurd what's happening. And I hope the people, it's just done for the people, by the people, with the people, that something will change and make this better. And the Segal talk, we will continue on week 14 next week. So they're coming to an end for this week, and we have on Monday 2 New York artists, great artists, organizers, curators, Cami Ilzenanmi from New York and Ebony Noel Golden from New York City. They will be both together here from the Laundromat Project, and her as an artist, performer, and choreographer. And we have news from Kosovo, where the National Theater has been destroyed a couple of weeks ago because of interest of redevelopment and others. Chaitan Netsirai from Kosovo, who came to La Mama not a long time ago with LGBT play, which was the very first one in Kosovo, which she presented, and they went around in small places, small towns, very dangerous thing, what he did, a fantastic work, how he put it together. And he will be joined by Giannina Kabunarari. She also came to us from Romania, who will also talk a bit about her situation there. On Wednesday, we hear from France, from Frédéric Ait Tuati. She collaborates with Bruno Latour and many projects. She was at NYU for that lecture performance. They're now working with the Berlin Festspiele with Thomas Oberender on a project where they think about the environment, and the idea is to have an exhibition about the environment, but without air conditioning and without using electricity, because if we have to change, also what we do, institutions have to change. How do you really do that even in the next season. It's a fantastic project. Her ideas about Brecht and her ideas about the encounter and the continuous of thinking, I think, is of importance to us. We will hear from the Ashtar Theater in Palestine. Iman Aoun will tell us what it means to be making theater right now in Palestine, already on complex, complicated conditions, politically, socially, economically, artistically, and on top of it, now we have that virus. And then we hear from Jamaica, the Caribbean again, the English-speaking Caribbeans this time, and Sakina Dia and Ivone Vultures will tell us how the situation is for theater artists in Jamaica, and what they think about, or what the consequences are of this virus, and in general, how it is to make art on the islands. And so again, Liwaa, thank you. It was really important for us to hear from you. It was really important to share. And I think for our listeners, we'll have better questions. We'll know a little bit more about that big, big world we live in. Any experience is singular and individual, but all together it creates something. We are all connected. We do care for each other. So we care about you and your work, and the sorrows of life. Hopefully, as theater should be, it's a joyful participation in the sorrows of life. But it is important for us to have listeners and who are there, and also there might be something in there for your own life that is of meaning, helps you to change, to become a better person. It helped me so much. I learned so much from all the talks, and I think we have to change authentically ourselves. That's what we're hearing from all our artists. We have to also change and take it serious and change then the world we go into. Thanks to HowlRound Freely out of Emerson College for hosting us, Thea and the VJ. It's sensational to be with us now for 14 weeks next week. I don't think they really knew we would do it so long. And now Thea has to get up in Los Angeles every morning before 9 o'clock, and she doesn't show it at all. It's an unholy time, but it means a lot to us and our listeners. And of course, to the Segal team, San Yang and Andy and everybody. And again, say hi to Berlin. And it's great to hear that things are going well. And yes, and what a great city it is at the moment. And you are right, American artists are going now to Berlin. It used to be Paris, it used to be New York, perhaps. Now it is Berlin's time still as a center, of something that is working, where there's an atmosphere. And art is about atmosphere that's being created and then reflected in the work. So, well, our listeners, see you next week. I really, really hope you can join us and stay with us. And bye-bye, Liwaa. Bye-bye. So all of you stay safe and stay tuned. And see you, as we now say, see you Zoom. Bye-bye.